For the month of December, I read 9 books. 2 of them are 5 stars and 3 of them I rated 1 star. The first book that we have is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This book I gave 4 stars to. This book has had a lot of hype. Much of it I agree it deserves. This book is about a young girl named Kaya who lives alone in the marsh. She's growing up and she's forming some connections, human connections, and she forms relationships with 2 boys from town. And then as the years goes by, one of them ends up deceased, and Kaya finds herself a suspect in a murder investigation. This book touches on a lot of heavy topics like classism, what it means to actually help somebody, racial relations, the poor, and love. Now, the reason why I gave it 4 stars, I would have given it 5 stars. I love this book so much. It was very beautiful. The depictions of nature and also the depictions of love. However, I hated the ending. I hated the ending. If the last 3 pages of the book did not exist, I would have given this a 5 star. But being what it was, I did give it a 4-star review. The next book we have, my underground book club had this book, and it is Salt to the Sea, which I normally would not have picked this up, but this was the book, and I'm glad they did. This is historical fiction. It is based off of the largest maritime loss of life, which is the Wilhelm Gustloff. It was or is, I don't know what term you use. It's at the bottom of the sea now. I believe it was January 1945. So right at the end of World War II, the Russians were pursuing the Germans, and in that pursuit, there were about between 10 and 11,000 people fled for their lives on this big German cruise liner. And on its journey, a Soviet submarine deployed some torpedoes and it sunk. It killed, the estimates put the loss of life at about 9,000 plus people. Many of them were civilians and children. This book, it focuses on 4 different characters, although I was a little bit disappointed because the book, the inside, and all the covers, they talk about this ship. But 75% of the book was just their journey to get to the ship, which was interesting, but that's not really what it was sold. I thought it was gonna be like Titanic, but that was only 25% of the book. It followed 4 characters. One of them was a Nazi who did everything imaginably wrong. Like if the guy was breathing, it would have been horrible. He was just a totally unlikable character all the way around. But it wasn't a boring read. It was interesting. I liked it. This is a solid 3-star book. If you don't know anything about, this maritime incident, I thought it was a great opportunity to, it piqued my curiosity, and I was looking up facts about the maritime disaster. It was very interesting. So if you're into that, definitely check out this book. The third book we have, this is our first 1-star review. This is Memories in the Drift by Melissa Payne. This was a debut December novel. I had pre-ordered this. And it is about a young lady named Claire. 10 years ago, she lost her pregnancy as well as her short-term memory. This was like a very bad, horrific Hallmark movie. Very unbelievable. You can see all the twists and turns coming. She lost her pregnancy 10 years ago, and then this 10-year-old child shows up, so I don't think that's a spoiler. If you can do basic math, you're gonna know kind of what that means. So it wasn't really a surprise at the end. Claire wakes up every single day and acts like an angsty teenager. Woe is me, my memory is horrible, why did this happen to me? She doesn't really try to do anything to better her memory or try new techniques or anything like that. She's just in the midst of a pity party, and everybody in her life just tries to support her all the time, doesn't have a job, just sits around and tries to make her feel wonderful about herself. It was so unrealistic, gives people unrealistic expectations. They were pressuring her to forgive people and not have any boundaries. It was a very unhealthy book. Gives people very unrealistic expectations. Everything was predictable. It was a 1 star. Now, then, thankfully, the next book we have is Kite Runner. This is our first 5-star book. I love this book so much. I was crying like 3 or 4 times in this book. It was so bittersweet. This book is about 2 boys in Afghanistan who are friends. One of them is the son of a very wealthy man, and the other boy is the first family. His father is a servant, so he's the son of a servant, and what that classism means, and their lives go in vastly different directions, largely as a result of a betrayal. And there's a lot of imperfect characters in the book who are doing their best to redeem themselves. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book of forgiveness. There are so many unexpected, but also at the same time realistic twists in the book. So you never really see what's coming, and it's so incredibly beautiful. Like, I cannot wait. I just read it and I cannot wait to read it again because it is just so moving and wonderful. The next book we have is The Last to Seer by Courtney Evan Tate. This is another 1-star book. This was billed as a thriller by Goodreads and I think Amazon. It was supposed to be a thriller. It wasn't a thriller. 1/3 of the way through the book, we knew who it was. Like, we knew who it was. They told us. Like, there was heavy foreshadowing where to the point where I'm like, okay, I think this is who it is. And then they just came out and told us. I think definitely by halfway through the book, they flat out told us. But I kind of heavily knew who it was in the first 1/3 of the book. So the other 2/3 of the book, you're like, okay, when is this gonna end? Then they have a police officer who is totally unprofessional, is sharing tidbits of the investigation with one of the sisters who's considered a suspect at the same time. And then meanwhile, one of the sisters is making this like crack against blue collar workers. And I'm like, whoa, that is inappropriate. It crosses the line. I hate it. If you want to know more about how much I hate it, I did a rant video on that one because I did not like it. It was not anything like Gone Girl. If you looked at the cover and you thought that's what it was gonna be like, it was about, and this is why I thought it was gonna be like Gone Girl. There's 2 sisters, Jen and Meg. Jen has this cheating husband, Thad. So she goes away for the weekend with her sister Meg. They go to this expensive swanky hotel. On the balcony, she throws her wedding ring off the balcony, says she needs to get air, and she's never seen or heard from again. And then the question is, who was the last to see her? What really happened to Jen? What led her to that balcony? But it wasn't engaging or interesting. You probably would know everything, like I said, in the first 1/3 of the book. And then it was just kind of repeated ad nauseum, like the characters just feeling bad for themselves and repeating the same like story over and over. It was just boring and it wasn't a thrilling thriller. I mean, that's like the one thing about thrillers. They're supposed to be exciting and engaging, page turning. This was not. The next book we have, this is The Secret Commonwealth by my very favorite author, Philip Pullman. Oh gosh, guys. This one, I recorded a video and I read this like on Christmas Eve and Christmas because I love Lyra and Pan. Like I said, this is my favorite author. And I think his prose is really beautiful. The other books that he's written with Lyra and Pan, they're really magical, bright, wonderful. He's so creative. He has all these different things, but it's not confusing. Like some authors, what they do fantasy, I'm super confused. This wasn't like that at all. I loved it. But this book, I hated it. I honestly, when I put it down, I thought, ooh, I'm gonna have to give this a 1 star. This is horrible. But does this book have enough where I could rate it a 2 stars? So I did end up giving it a 2 star. I do think that the author, I love his prose. I love how he does try to make the world a better place. He does incorporate some recent events in the book, and he uses stories to kind of touch on some of those deeper topics. But the book was too dark. It was way too dark, way too dark. It was totally off-brand. Like, it just wasn't meant for this series. It was way too dark. And Philip Pullman even talks about how Lyra has melancholy in an interview with the New Yorker. So this is not just me talking, this is the author. I mean, he'll confirm it. It was just too dark. It wasn't for me. I really hope that the third book has kind of like that Kite Runner, like redemption. That's what I want to see, like crying bittersweet tears at the end. It always felt like in the other books that Lyra and Pan had the upper hand, but in this one, the hits just kept on coming, and there was no showdown at the end. This was 600 plus pages, and I'm like, where's the showdown? Where's the showdown? Where's the action? It never came. So it was quite a bit. It was honestly a huge disappointment. The next book we have the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is on the 100 books to read before you die, according to the BBC. This is a list that I started working on this year. This book was actually really funny. I gave it a 3-star. I think if I looked at it from books from the 70s, I probably would rate it either a 4 or 4.5 star. Because nowadays because with the internet and YouTube, people have different expectations. If you're not satisfied in the first 8 seconds, yes, I've actually heard 8 seconds, people will move on now because your attention span is much shorter. So I thought the first half of the book was really strong. I was laughing out loud. I was reading this with a family member and we were both just cracking up. The second half I didn't think was as funny as the first. But it is about, there is this gentleman named Arthur Dent. He lives on planet Earth. Right before the Earth is going to be demolished for a highway, he's plucked off the planet by his best friend, Ford Prefect, and they are traveling the galaxy. They meet up with a whole host of different characters and funny different situations. You may like it, you may not. As I was reading it, I was laughing out loud. I still thought, I haven't seen the movies yet, so I'll put that like caveat out there. I haven't seen the movies yet. And I don't know if the humor would translate well to a movie. So I don't know if I had just seen the movie, if I would think it's funny, because I don't know how the translation is going to be from the book to the movie. Maybe it'll be great. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'll do a reaction video. Let me know below if you want me to do like a reaction video to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I did enjoy the book. It's a solid 3-star. Then this book, it is Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game. This book, I gave it a 2-star, and this book, I did not like it at all. I just didn't like it. So Money that Master the Game, there were 2 really key concepts that I think were important and that I agree with. One, everybody really needs to save between 10 and 20% of their salary for retirement at a minimum. And because I agree with the author, which is we don't have pensions anymore, at least my generation. Pensions are relatively unheard of. Maybe at the post office, they might still offer a pension. And even if you do have a pension, some of those pension funds are in serious trouble. So just because you're promised a pension doesn't mean that the funds are going to be available when you need them, because they're unfunded or they're underfunded. And if you still have 30 years to put in and other people are qualifying today, those funds may be fully depleted by the time you come and try to claim them. In addition, Social Security is underfunded as well. Currently, like my generation, there's a little asterisk that says the Social Security fund is expected to run out and you're only going to be able to receive 70% of your benefits. So between not having a pension and only having 70% of Social Security, you have to save for retirement. So I agree with that point. But number 2, a lot of people invest in mutual funds, but they don't give you better returns on your money and they charge a fee no matter what. So even if your mutual funds go down, which that's expected, if the market drops dramatically, you're probably going to lose money, but your fund manager is still going to take a cut of that money. So you'd be better off in a low fee index fund, because it's going to outperform that mutual fund and you're not going to pay as much in fees. So I thought those 2 points were solid, which is why I gave it a 2-star. But for the most part, 1, the book was way too long, just way too long. 2, he did do a lot of research. I'll give the author credit. He did do a lot of research, which is clear and evident in the book. He has lots of stories by different investors, but he didn't give a clear message. He first will say, go invest in a low index fund or a low fee index fund. he will say, get life insurance, get an annuity, get gold, get commodities, get tips, get treasury bonds. It's like, oh my gosh, you can't tell people to do all these different plans. You need to make the best choice and say, this is it, and then explain why. No, people, you're saying in this book that this is for the average investor, but you gave people all these different options. It's very confusing. I also did not understand the life insurance, and I also did not understand the annuities. My understanding is with some of these programs that they hold on to your cash and then they buy options in the stock market, so that in the case that the stock market goes up, you share in the gains. But then the question is, why are you paying somebody else to do that? Can't you just buy your own options? So he didn't explain that very well. I personally have a policy, if I don't understand what they're talking about, I don't buy it. I don't like fast talkers. I'm a lawyer and a CPA. If I don't understand it, they didn't do a good job explaining it. Don't fall into that trap of, oh, well, I don't want to feel stupid for asking a question. You need to ask questions. Don't buy anything that you don't understand, because people will take your money from you and you'll be left with nothing, especially if it's a very high fee-based program with hidden costs. You want to understand, is that just something that you can do on your own for a much less fee, and what exactly is involved? He also was talking to the average investor. He was talking about how the author, Tony, was talking about how he has an island in Fiji, and on and on and on. And it's like, you're talking to the average investor, Tony. Not now, Tony. Not now. Like, that was just totally inappropriate. He's such a big name dropper. It's all like, rah, rah, pump you up. You can do it. You're better off for reading this book. You're so awesome. You're beautiful. You're ahead of the game. You can do it. You can save for retirement. And it's just like, oh my gosh, cut all this like garbage out and cut this book in half. I mean, this was 600 plus pages. It was so boring. It took me forever to read it. He also drastically underestimated the cost for retirement. So he was telling people, oh, well, let's try to think of your retirement and what you need. And people were coming up with these really big numbers. And he was saying, well, what's the basic things that you would need? Instead of having a jet, you could rent a jet for a few weeks. Like, you're totally missing the point, Mr. Robbins. Because I know people who are of that age where they're in their 90s. And what happens is you have to plan for long-term care. You might not want it, but if you get so old that you're eating rotten food because you don't remember when you bought it, or you'll just consume an entire bottle of pills because you don't remember taking pill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till the whole thing's empty, then you go, oh, I'm out of pills. I need to go order some more. Like, you're not going to be able to stay in your home, even if you want to, even if you live there for 50 years. You're going to have to go to a home. And then the big question is, what type of home do you want to go to? Do you want to have a home where they have smoking inside, where it stinks, where they just let you sit in front of the TV all day and they don't change you or take care of you or get you up to go to the bathroom? I mean, no, you have to plan for long-term care. You have to plan for long-term care. There was even a gentleman, a family friend of ours, he got sick. The government healthcare will only pay for you to be in the nursing home or the long-term care for so many days. After that, they will kick you out. It doesn't matter if you're hooked up to a bunch of IVs and you're broken and you're totally incapable of going home. If it's against doctor's orders, they don't care. You've been cut off by the insurance, you're going to be discharged. And the gentleman ended up paying for 24/7 nursing care at his home until he died. This was essentially hospice care. So this is the kind of expenses you must save for retirement. This is not just let's think about jumbo jets. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I would give this a 2-star. I thought most of the advice was total bunk. But it does drive home the point. You absolutely need to save for retirement and look out for those fees. You're welcome. I saved you 20 hours of reading that horribly boring book. The last book we have, this is our other 5-star book. This is The Wife Upstairs. This was, I think it's going to come out in January, but this was available through Book of the Month. I was planning on reading more books of the month, but I was hung up in that USPS fiasco. I did not get my books until after Christmas. They were stuck in Detroit. I had to submit a trace on my package, and then they came back and lied to me and say that they never received the package when I knew it was sitting in Detroit, I think since December the 11th, and it was sitting there for 10 plus days. And then I had to submit a second trace to a second order for them to look into it. And it was a mess. Book of the Month eventually ended up sending me a second package. I do have that, but I am behind in my Book of the Month because I got it after Christmas. But The Wife Upstairs, this book was awesome. It is a modern day Jane Eyre. We have Jane, who is a dock walker in Thornfield Estates, which is this really ritzy neighborhood. She meets this widower, Eddie Rochester, and they're falling in love. And Eddie Rochester, he had a wife who went missing in a lake accident or a boating accident with her best friend. And then the question of the book is you're figuring out like what happened, what's Jane's history and what's Eddie's history and what happened on both of them, and you're getting like little clues from both sides. And you don't even know like who's telling you the truth and what's really happened, what's going on. There's all these like unexpected twists. I love it. It was one of those books where it's like 1 minute and then you're reading and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. 1 more minute and you're reading more and like 1 more minute and you're reading more. I loved it. It was awesome. It definitely had some flaws that I overlooked and gave my 5-star rating because it was so page turning. I will talk about some of the flaws because I'm not blind. One, the main character, Jane, she hates rich people, like hates them with a passion. And she thinks like she can just steal stuff from people and they won't notice. Just because somebody is rich doesn't mean that they're not gonna notice something missing. Especially, she doesn't know what she's stealing if it's sentimental or not. So if you have a bracelet, even if it's a cheap bracelet, or if you have a set of earrings that really mean the world to you and something goes missing, you're going to notice. So there's that. And also a lot of rich people were not born with the silver spoon in their mouths. They're self-made. They're just like Jane. So I don't know why there's all this like tremendous amount of hate for rich people. She may say she hates the way that some of their help are treated, not with respect and looked down to as like, you know, subhuman. I could see that, but she just, I didn't like some of that with the main character. I also didn't understand some of the story at the end, but I'm not going to ruin it. I thought it was a touch unrealistic and kind of a little bit of a plot hole at the end. So, but I'm not gonna ruin it for you because it's wonderful. It is wonderful. Make sure to pick it up. Tell me in the comments what you guys enjoyed reading in December. And if you've read these books, what your feelings were. Let me know if you read The Secret Commonwealth and what your thoughts are. If you believe that books create ideas and ideas change the world, let's change the world one book at a time. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I'm Lisa of Troy. Peace.